So hello and welcome to another video from Another Knitted Thing. Today we're going to be looking into this dimensional structure, which also creates this pattern and this pattern as well. So for the first pattern that I showed, the purple and grey one, I am just working out the needle structure on the double bed machine. So this is a double bed technique, and I'm going to be working with both beds, the front and the back bed. I am going to be creating a needle structure on the front bed, and I will alternate between those needle structures, so it means transferring stitches out of action and bringing needles back up into action where needed, and I will also be creating ripples on the back bed as well. So at the moment I am just organising my needles and making sure that I have the correct number of needles for the pattern that I would like to knit. So this is a small version of the pattern that I'm going to be remaking, and you can see that I have areas, the grey areas of working stitches on the front bed, and then I have ripples which are in the purple on the back bed. So the working needles on the front are these stitches here that I'm just counting, and in between I have groups of 3 needles on either side of those groups of 12, which will be out of action and just give a little bit of space between those working needles on the front bed. So I'm working with 5 groups of 12 needles. The previous sample that I showed had 3, so it's just going to be a little bit wider. Once I have my needles set up, I can then introduce my front bed needles or the ribbon bed needles, and I want exactly the same amount of needles on the front and the back bed. And once that is sorted, I can go ahead and cast on with the double bed. So I've cast on, I thought I didn't need to show that, and I'm now going to start arranging my needles into the needle arrangement which is suitable for this pattern. I'm going to be transferring the front bed needles that I don't need out of action, and I'm going to be placing them onto the back bed. So I'm working in groups of 12 as I mentioned before, and for these sections I'm going to transfer a total of 18 stitches. So I have those 3 on either side of the group of 12, and then the group of 12 in the middle. So you could say, working from left to right, I'm transferring sections 2 and 4 out of action, and then I have sections 1, 3 and 5 of the 12 needles in action on the front bed. So where I have the needles in action on the front bed, that will create the areas of front facing stitches, and then where I don't have needles working, where I then put them out of action, you will just see the ripple, and you will see the ripple material that I'm working with. I will now take my carriage across and I will change colour to the ripple yarn. I'm going to turn off my front bed, and I'm then going to take the carriage across. So the carriage is now only knitting on the back bed. My front bed is turned off. So all the needles on the back bed will create a stitch. None of the needles on the front bed will create a stitch. This is creating the ripple, and I will do 4 rows with the ripple yarn, the purple, before I pick up my main yarn, which is the grey yarn, and I will turn the front bed carriage back on, so it will start knitting again, and I will take the carriage across twice. I do more rows when I'm creating the ripple than I do with the main yarn, and that is because I want to build up texture and I want to build up fabric on the back bed only. So after every 4 rows of a ripple, I change colour and I go across with all needles knitting to create the full rib in the areas where I have the front bed working. You can see here that this is the grey yarn, this is my main yarn, and I'm only working on the stitches where I want those stitches to be created on the front bed, rather than working the whole area. And that is because of my needle placements, where I have transferred the needles right at the beginning out of action. I will repeat this about 5 times, creating about 5 ripples. And that is the pattern that I've been working up. You can repeat this more if you want a longer stretch of those front-facing needles, or you can create less if you would like to. So I've just had a look into the ripples, and I've decided now that is the time to change the pattern and to change the needle structure on the front. So to do that, I'm simply going to bring up the needles that were out of action into the working position. So now I have all of those front bed needles working apart from the 3 either side. And I will take the carriage across. So you can see that I have all 5 sections of those 12 needles now working and creating stitches. And I am now going to transfer the needles that were previously working, so sections 1, 3 and 5, out of action by transferring them across to the back bed. I will always introduce new needles or take needles out of action after a ripple row. This I have found creates the neatest fabric and the neatest sample compared to bringing needles in or out of action after a row with all the needles knitting with full rib. You can play with this. You don't have to do as I do. You can bring the needles in and out of action with it whenever you like. And you can also do them at any point after a ripple. So you don't have to do them all at once. You can create a pattern in the knitting, which is what I've done on the other 2 samples that I showed at the beginning of the video. Once I have transferred the needles out, I then repeat the process. So I'm now creating a ripple on the back bed, and I turned off the front bed, and now I have come back in with my main yarn and both of the beds working to knit all of the needles. When I brought needles back up into the working position as well, I did not need to put yarn on those needles. I didn't need to transfer any heels of the stitches. I didn't need to do any setup rows. Because I have all of the needles working on the back bed, whenever I bring up needles on the front bed, over 2 rows, they will automatically create a full stitch. So I don't need to worry about whether those needles will actually create stitches or not. I know over 2 rows, when I'm working with both beds working, I know they will automatically create stitches. This is just a setup so you can see the yarn changer as well. And I'm just doing another repeat. So I've transferred the stitches out of action, and I have reintroduced the needles that were out of action. Now I have quite an important point to make about the ripples and how many rows you can get into each ripple. I am currently working with 4 rows per ripple, but this is a bit yarn dependent. You might be able to get more rows in if you're working with a lighter weight yarn. If you're working with a heavier weight yarn, then you might only be able to get 2 rows in. This is because as the ripple builds, you still have those stitches on the front bed that aren't being used, and as the fabric builds up, that part of the fabric won't have any weight on it, which means that it could get caught up in the needles. It's not being pulled down, and you might struggle with creating stitches. Therefore, just stick with around 4 rows for the ripple. If you can get more in, great, and you might be able to get more texture in, but I'm not going to risk it with this one. I know the yarns, and I'm working with just wool, but I'm just going to keep it on the safe side with 4 rows. Also, apologies for the husky voice. I am suffering with a bit of a cold at the minute, but I am powering through. So here is the piece. Once I have cast off, I will now take it off the machine and we can have a look at it. If you do like my videos, then you know those 3 words. You can like, you can comment and subscribe. I will look at the comments and get back to you if there's any questions. You can find me on Instagram as well at Another Knitted Thing. And I also have a Patreon where I write up technical sheets that you can follow. And I've got some more videos as well. So you can see the front facing stitches and you can see the ripples and you can begin to see the fabric starting to build up its texture. As you can see. And that is the final result from this. Give it a go and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.